Welcome to the launch edition of So You Want to Be a Principal? I'm Brian.Dehn, a Principal Systems Engineer with Dell Technologies based in Denver, Colorado. And this is a video blog series focused on providing career advancement advice for Presales Solutions Architects and Systems Engineers and so on. Now, I was running my thoughts and ideas for the series by a couple of my neighbors the other day, and their feedback to me was anybody in any industry could use these concepts to grow their career. Finance, retail, other business units inside Dell. So great, use this information however you like. I will be focusing on pre-sales during this series. The information you're going to hear is going to be three things: real, candid, and proven. So what do I mean? Real. The information that you're going to hear is coming from the real life experience of myself and the guests we will have involved during this blog series. Not from books, not from classes. It's based on our real life experience. Second, we're going to be candid. Everyone, myself and my guests, are going to give you our thoughts and our recommendations in a direct manner. We're not here to tickle your ears, provide ear candy, or so on. We're going to give you the raw information you need to hopefully grow your career as well. And third, the information is going to be proven. The majority of people who will participate in this blog series are principals like myself, and the information you hear from us has been proven already in our own careers. We've been there, we've done that, we're doing it now, and we want to communicate that proven information to you, so hopefully it will help you. And we're going to start this series with a bang. We're going to go right to the end of the book. We're going to provide the answers before we even get to the questions. What do I mean by that? Earlier, I recorded an interview session with two principals, Jackie.Mckay and Arash Ghazanfari, and we're going to hear from them very soon in this first blog session. In subsequent blogs, I will drill down into many of the points that will be brought up during this interview with Jackie and Arash. But for now, let's cut to the interview. Hey everyone, I'm glad you joined the first principal panel interview session in this series. It's Brian.Dehn here. More important, I want to introduce two Dell Technologies pre-sales principals, Jackie and Arash, and then jump right into them talking about their careers, what has worked for them, not worked for them, suggestions and recommendations from them to you as you're listening, all around career advancement. With the intent that you hopefully come away learning something that can help you in your career. So, Jackie, would you like to introduce yourself? How long you've been a principal? Give us a quick picture of what your career has looked like up to this point.
Okay, so Jackie.Mckay, I'm based out of the Dallas, Texas area here in the U.S., and I've been with Dell, or EMC prior to Dell, for over 22 years now. And I've been a principal since 2009, so that's 12 years. When I first came to the company, I came from another company where I was in a software systems development, software systems engineering role. So I already had a higher level view of systems coming into play. I also worked, once coming to EMC, in the alliances group, in service providers group, telco, media, and entertainment, whether it was dedicated to a single account or supporting the entire vertical. So being able to expand that broad reach into our customer base was really, really helpful in me in my goal to, or role or journey to get to a principal systems engineering position.
Cool. Thank you, Jackie. I've known Jackie for many years, back to the early 2000s. She's got 2 years on me at Dell. I just hit 20. Honestly, I don't respect or trust anyone more. She's got a impressive brand and a reputation. It's common that I hear in meetings, oh, we need an expert to come in and talk about this. I've heard about Jackie. Her reputation precedes her, which is all part of why where she is now. Arash, I just met last week, virtually on Zoom. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about Arash. Arash, your turn to introduce yourself. How long you've been a principal, what your career path has looked like to this point.
Thanks, Brian and Jackie, for having me. Really appreciate it. So Arash Ghazanfari, serving the UK business in pre-sales. I joined Dell Technologies back in November 2017. Prior to that, I came from Intel Security, which then spun off to become McAfee. So I had some exposure to cybersecurity there and worked for a number of other organizations before Intel, and including VMware. At VMware, I was a cloud management business unit specialist for a significant portion of my career there, aligned to global accounts. And in the early days of the Nicira acquisition, I supported the early engagements around software-defined networking and security, sort of conversations that we were having with our customers to essentially improve the ROI on the Nicira acquisition. And then I also helped craft some of the messaging that we drove in the UK, particularly around that whole SDN and cloud management automation ecosystem. At Dell Technologies, I was given the opportunity to serve the UK business's enterprise division at a time as a field CTO supporting strategic and pursuit opportunities. And the reality, quite frankly, is that I didn't have becoming a principal as part of my career objective. I was encouraged by our leader at the time, Alejandro Di Polito, who was leading the UK enterprise pre-sales team at the time, to basically apply. And the first time I applied was back in 2018, and I basically failed. My application didn't even make it through because I believe I'd been with the business for only just over 6 months. But I applied again for the second time, and my application went through the EMEA and corporate selection committees, and I was awarded with the principal position, for which, of course, I'm very grateful.
Great, thank you. I know that the process for becoming principal has changed a whole lot since Jackie and I became principals back in the 2009 timeframe to now, which is what you've gone through. So hopefully, you can educate us a little more on maybe the differences or what you had to go through in that process. So let's dive deeper into some answers for those of you who are watching and listening to this session. Answers to questions like, how can you advance in your career? What do you need to do to get promoted? How should you go about positioning yourself for success in your career? Let's start with Jackie again. Next time around, we'll start with Arash for our last series of questions. But for Jackie for now, what would you say are the top 2 or 3 factors that most impacted your achieving principal? Along those lines, did you have a strategy for advancement? Were those 2 or 3 factors part of your strategy? Were you just lucky? I can tell you that I know the answer to the lucky question. No, that's a lot of work to get to that point. Luck doesn't come into play. So talk about the items that were most important to you advancing you in your career to where you are now, Jackie.
So some of the key things is first and foremost to have that deep technical knowledge and share that deep technical knowledge. It's very important as a principal that not only do you know what you need to know, but you also view and see what's out there, what gaps are out there for your coworkers, for your customers, and be able to address that without having it be an MBO or being one of those criteria that says you need to be able to show this information. That's one of those things that helps increase your brand out there. Brian, you'd mentioned being in meetings, and my name's mentioned. Well, if they don't know you, if they don't know your brand, they don't know what you're capable of, then they don't know to bring you in. And that exposure is one of those key things. If you don't know them, they don't know you, you're not going to be part of that particular engagement or challenge or new direction that the company's going into. So the deep technical knowledge, being able to see and apply it, the increasing of your brand so that people know you and they know what you're capable of. And finally, one of the key things that I found is knowing what you don't know. and calling for help. Because a principal is not the only source of knowledge. You are not the only source of knowledge in the room. And you increase trust with the people you're interacting with if you truly don't know and you say, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Being able to identify and address those areas where you need to expand and then follow through. Because being a principal means they can count on you to follow through, whether it's your commitments or finding out or expanding your knowledge so that you could be more helpful in the future, or empowering others to make sure that they understand completely what they need to know as well. Finally, the last thing the principal has to be able to look at is not just current, they've got to have a very future-focused view. So we have to, it's not a point decision process that we're a part of. It is part of the vision and planning and helping to guide to get to that end state, whether it's 6 months down the road or 5 years. So we have to be able to view beyond the now. That would be my key areas.
Okay, you mentioned a couple things I want to call out. You used the word finding gaps.
Yes.
And I'll paraphrase, doing things outside of what's expected of you, like the MBOs are expected of you. Your point was doing things that are outside those expectations. And you mentioned the gap. Can you give us briefly an example of that and in your career?
Oh, okay. So in my career, I've transitioned to different groups. For a very long time, I was part of the telco meeting entertainment vertical, which was very self-contained. We had a very specific focus of customers we were going for. And at that time, when you're in that vertical, there was not a lot of overlap, whether it was enterprise or commercial, mid-tier type different accounts. So when that vertical was collapsed into enterprise, there was a lot of brand recognition I had to increase with the people that I had not really interacted with a lot before because they didn't really know me or what I could do. So part of what I recognized was there was a lot of gaps in some of the deep technical knowledge that was needed for, we just started doing the V-block type architecture. And there was a lot of deep technical knowledge that the local SEs weren't really aware of. So I started creating classes that I held periodically with those different account teams to give them that deep technical knowledge, be able to share that deep technical knowledge of what they're seeing, what we need to do to address it, what are best practices, those type things. It wasn't part of an MPO, but it was a gap that I was able to see based on the groups I was interacting with at the time, which helped to increase my brand, not only with the account teams, but also with VMware for some of the VCE deployments. They were going, okay, let's review this through Jackie to make sure we don't have problems in the future. So it was a way to expand brand as well as confidence that others have in what I can do and what I bring to the table.
Okay, and that's a great example. I've heard multiple examples like that from other principals who've noticed gaps, and this is what's happened with me as well. Noticing gaps, and then you fill those gaps, and then you become almost an instant expert on the solution for that gap, and your name starts to spread, and your brand grows, and your reputation grows, and you become the go-to person for that solution. I've heard that story over and over. That's a great example. Thank you. Arash, your turn. You, again, achieved principal recently, a couple of years ago. Looking back on your career path, talk about the most important things that led you to this point. Did you have a strategy for advancing in your career? Talk about what worked best for you.
Thank you. it's really interesting to hear Jackie's perspective because, many years ago, I was at EMC, and I was part of a C-Speed, U-Speed program, and spotting a gap around how to de-risk solution architectures from a performance perspective. That was a skills gap at that time amongst the pre-sales community, and that helped me create my brand at the time. And I think those principles do still apply. Coming back to your question regarding my strategy has always been do what's right for the business, what's right for your team members, and what's right for yourself, and basically for myself and my family. Personally, I'm actually striving to grow into a more of a thought leadership position. We've got many technical people within the business. Many of them are skilled in many diverse areas within our broad portfolio of capabilities. But I think the reality is that our customers, particularly, I'm not sure about the US market, but particularly in the UK and EMEA market, we are seeing a decentralization of IT budgets. This is only going to accelerate with the emergence of Apex as we're getting more and more serious about our as a service portfolio of offering and capabilities. And I think as those budgets diverge away from IT, there needs to be a way for us to navigate our way through those executive conversations and increase our relevance. So for my own personal career strategy, I'm trying to basically move myself in that direction and build a brand around that as someone who can help account teams navigate those C-level or executive discussions. But I'm always giving myself permission to change direction if necessary, because my circumstances might evolve. I would suggest that what can also contribute to your success is also great leadership. Great leadership is absolutely essential, and I can say that here in the UK, we've got the likes of, for example, I hope they don't mind me mentioning them, but Dane Turbot and Steve Gilderdale and the extended leadership team in the UK are genuinely doing their best to create advancement opportunities, maybe under less than perfect circumstances, because at the moment the business is under a lot of stress due to the pandemic and economical pressures. But I think leaders can do a lot to create platforms for growth. But it's really important as individuals we take control of our own career objectives and development plans. We need to be able to clearly communicate our goals and aspirations to our leaders and have a point of view around what that progression journey could look like, and ask for help and support. It's really important that you're asking for that help and support. You don't wait for others to present opportunities to you. You need to go for it. It's easier than said than done, because sometimes it's not easy to actually know what the next steps are, and that's perfectly okay. I think we need to give ourselves time to figure things out, and that's not always easy. So that for me, really, it's as Jackie said, it's about creating a brand, spotting gaps, and I can tell you some of the examples of the gaps that I spotted when I joined the business. So, for example, when I first joined the company, I noticed that the messaging at the time, this is 2017, of course, was that if the customer wants to build their own security controls, point them in the direction of RSA. If they were interested in consuming managed services, leverage SecureWorks. And I thought that's a missed opportunity, given the integration and the depth and breadth of partnerships that we have with, let's say, VMware, and the fact that we can build security intrinsically into our pre-validated architectures. There is an opportunity here to construct a compelling story that can build our relevance to the market, extend the conversations outside of core IT, and tap into budgets that might sit outside of IT if we were to position our offerings in the context of providing better security outcomes. And that message was received to a degree by our Office of the CTO when I was part of a CTO Ambassador program last year. And also it was also well received by VMware, and it's been really successful at various executive briefings. And I'm pleased to say that I'm one of the go-to people, certainly here in EMEA, to help drive those discussions. The other gap was, Keith Manthe and Mike Bloom, who's no longer with the business, they ran a fantastic deep learning workshop in Brentford, London for 2 days. And that was really enlightening to be part of that workshop. But I thought that there was an opportunity to make that message more consumable to the broader community in Presales. So I basically worked with my colleague Hardy Brandnova, who is now a global architect aligned to Barclays. And we created enablement sessions and content. We managed to enable 70 plus SEs and solutions architects around how to navigate conversations around data science, how to speak the language of what a CDO, for example, what a chief data officer cares about. How do we speak the language of accelerating time to insight and increasing data science productivity? And these are conversations that can lead to positioning high margin offerings that we are obviously, this is our priority. We need to pay the Silver Lake debt as quickly as possible. But it's these good conversations that can generate those massive opportunities. And these conversations, particularly around data science, are conversations that you don't really typically drive through core IT. And so we needed to help others to develop the vocabulary and the language that could resonate with stakeholders that sit outside of IT. And the third example, the last one, is increasing VMware literacy. I noticed a gap when I joined the business that a lot of our colleagues were focused on the core VMware offering around the hypervisor, maybe a little bit around the vRealize portfolio, but VMware had a much broader offering and range of capabilities. And I think there is a danger of outsourcing that conversation completely to VMware. It can have, I won't go into the reasons why, but it can have unintended consequences. And I felt that it was really important that as Dell Technologies, we stayed front and center of that ecosystem conversation. And so we built a program to increase the awareness and gamify that learning a little bit. So we pushed a lot of people through the VTSP certification program outside of the core range of VMware offerings. So those were the three gaps that I spotted, and with the help of leadership at the time, I managed to push those programs through.
Thank you. It's again, continuing the theme that I'm noticing, principals tend to identify gaps and fill those gaps on their own outside of what they're expected to do. You mentioned a couple things that I've heard as well. Management. I've heard it over and over. Get your management on board. Do it tactfully, do it strategically, but get your management behind you. Let them know what you are trying to achieve in your career, and have them help you. It's having their help is good, but the flip side of that is don't sit back, and you said this, don't sit back and just wait. You need to take control as much as you can of your career and initiate things there. So great points. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your stories. I love to hear about people's career journeys, what has worked for them. So thank you. Before we end this interview, I'd love it if you would both talk directly to anyone who's watching, listening this video, and give them what you consider to be the most important suggestions and recommendations about how they can advance in their pre-sales career. So Arash, we'll start with Arash this time. You're talking, to take a couple minutes, you're talking directly to the viewers. What would you give them for as your recommendations?
That's a very good question. I think that career advancement and success, it can be very subjective, because what good looks like to me might not be the same as what good looks like to someone else according to their personal circumstances. But what I can say is it's really important that you're true to yourself. You don't lose sight of what makes you happy and what's right for you, as well as what's right for the business. I would suggest that we need to be confident in our ability and be prepared to take some risks if necessary. Put yourself in some uncomfortable situations and create opportunities for learning new things. Broadening your reach, as Jackie was referring to, building your relationships, broadening your reach, a desire to broadening your impact to the business is really, really important. And it can create opportunities for growth. So don't just focus on, as Jackie said, what is expected of you, trying to do more, trying to go above and beyond. But that is something that only, it's not something you can fake. You need to genuinely want to make a difference. And look at, let's say we're talking about a principal position. Look at a principal program, not as an opportunity for advancement or as a promotion, but think of it as a platform that you're going to be given, as a privilege that you're going to have to transform the business. So that's a very different mindset, I would suggest. And promotion, I would suggest, would be the byproduct of that.
Okay. Thank you. Good stuff there. You mentioned taking risks. This video blog, as I'm calling it, is my risk. I have never done this before. This is my first attempt at it. And so I appreciate both of you putting up with me through this and actually doing the first one with me. So I appreciate that. You have greatly reduced the risk on my part. So thank you. Jackie, your recommendations.
So the main thing I would think about is we have to look beyond. We're not just doing what's the best for the business. We're doing what's best for the customer. We're in pre-sales, after all. Being able to empathize and put ourselves in the customer position. A lot of times I'll say, if it were me, this is what I would be concerned with, because it tells the customer themselves, I know what they're going through and I know where they need to go. And it also helps me identify certain things that I really think they need to be concerned with. Being able to put yourselves into someone else's position and say, what would they want to know? Being able to empower them so that they can maybe not run completely solo, but not always have to rely back on you, because you have educated and shared knowledge and shared power with them. So you know that they can trust you, but they can also move forward on themselves. A principal will share that knowledge. They're not a lockbox of knowledge that you always have to go to. You don't want to be, you're the single point of failure in that whole education and empowerment process. So education shared is power shared, and that allows us to be seen as a trusted advisor, even if you've only talked to that person for 30 minutes. You're already identifying how you're empowering them to do what they need to do. So work beyond your power. Your power is increased when you empower others. And that's a big step that a principal has to go to, because they're not the go-to person. They're the enabler now, because they're enabling much more across the entire customer base, business base. So we're enabling our customers, we're enabling our coworkers. We are a valued resource, and to become a principal, you have to show you are a valued resource to others.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's impossible to do what's right for the business without customer centricity. So really important point. Thank you for raising.
Thank you. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up from either one of you? Anything come to mind while the other's talking?
So Dell Technologies is a global business, and it's really important that what we receive from corporate, we make it relevant to the market in which we are operating. And I think principal pre-sales people can really make a huge impact in that thought leadership element. And we desperately need that in order to globally succeed as a team. And as Jackie said, sharing knowledge and being open to collaborating with others outside of your geography even though you might not be recognized on those accounts, I think can be quite powerful too, which is something that I've been doing certainly across EMEA, even though I'm aligned to the UK with the support of my leadership. I've been able to broaden my reach. So don't be afraid to do that. And that can only lead to great things.
Using our resources across geographies,
Mm-hmm.
very, very big. I've got several people that I will leverage or bounce ideas off of or get their insights to, whether they're in EMEA, Asia Pac, all in all geographies across the world. It's and they're always willing to help. And that's another key thing of being a principal, being there for everybody, whether it's part of your quota support or not, being able to do what's best for the business.
Yeah, Jackie, you mentioned that you work closely, and we both know a guy named Raymond Bartley in Texas, and he's a character and another great principal. When I was talking with him a couple months ago, he mentioned that exact point, and he phrased it as in never say no. Like when somebody comes to you for help, never say no, even if you don't know the answer and it's outside of your realm of expertise or your geography or the region that you cover, whatever. Even if you have the answer, help them. If you don't, say, I will get you the answer and then get back to them. That kind of stuff builds your reputation.
Or if you can tell them who to go to, who is a better resource, and then say, let me know what you find out. Because every opportunity, every time something like that happens, it's an opportunity to learn and grow.
Yep. Yeah. As principals, it's not like we've achieved the ultimate. That's probably one of our first on the forefront of all of our minds as principals is I need to keep learning. Please teach me. So again, thank you, Jackie and Arash, for sharing your stories. This is not a typical topic of discussion in meetings. It's more like we're getting a peek behind the scenes at everything that Jackie and Arash have done to bring themselves to this point in their career as professionals. And now we've had the privilege of learning from them about what they've done personally to get where they are professionally. So that took a level of vulnerability and openness about yourselves, which I really appreciate. So thank you.
Thank you for having us. Really.
Thank you for this opportunity.
All right. And that wraps up our first principal panel in this series. I hope it was helpful for you. Great information. Thank you again, Jackie and Arash, for volunteering your time, your thoughts, your recommendations, and being so open with us so we can learn from you. And for those of you watching, hopefully what you heard from them is helpful and of value to you as you figure out how you want to grow your career. Feel free to contact any of the three of us. Arash, Jackie, or myself. Our contact info should be in the text description where this video is posted. And keep looking for more video blog sessions to come in this series. My plan is to drill down into many of the points that were brought up during the interview today, as well as others that weren't even mentioned yet. So thanks for watching and see you in the next session.